Okay, let's get started. So hi everyone. My name's Jonathan Quay. I'm president of the Victorian Pipers Association here in Melbourne, Australia. I'm also the owner and operator of jqpiping.com. That's just a little shameless plug for my own little business there. So I'm here to present a relatively comprehensive tutorial on Glengarry's Lament. We're all in isolation, so we might as well learn something. I think that's a good use of our time. Um, so this just a little bit of housekeeping. So if we can just stay muted in terms of our videos and our microphones, it is being recorded. So I will be posting the recording on our website later on. If you do want to ask any questions, feel free to jump into the chat, and if I see them pop up, I'll endeavour to answer any questions. But yeah, and if you do want any further details, feel free to email us. We might have some time at the end if you actually want to ask any questions as well. So, like I said, I'm here to present a relatively comprehensive tutorial on Glengarry's Lament. This is a good pibroch for those just starting out. The ground and the first few variations are pretty straightforward. Like any pibroch though, once you start venturing into the torlure and crunlure variations, your skills, concentration, stamina, all of that, your instrument, all of that gets tested. So I think this tune is good. It can take you up to about a C grade standard in solos, depending on what standards your local piping scene works by. So in the VPA, we've got novice, D grade, C grade, B and A. So I think this is good for novice right up to C grade. So I'll display the tune here. Just bear with me 1 second. Can everyone see that? I've lost my chat screen, but that's okay. So hopefully everyone can see that. So you can probably find copies of this sort of music on the internet, but I would always recommend purchasing, purchasing the bagpipe, all of the pibroch books, whether it be the Pibroch Society collection, Kilberry book. It's always good to support the organisations that make all these books. A lot of the top players around the world as well have their own websites, and they'll do their own recordings, have their own written out copies of the tunes. So you can Google all of that sort of stuff. So I've just got it up here to refer to it as we go along. If you're brand new to pibroch, I'm going to be using a few terms that you may or may not be familiar with. So we don't have time to cover all of the specific pibroch lingo. So I'd recommend seeking advice from your tutor, or you can contact myself or the VPA, and we'll help you out with finding someone, whether it be online or live, or person to person. So Glengarry's Lament. Let's get started. So the tune was composed by Archibald Munro, piper to Alistair Ranaldson MacDonald, 15th Chief of Glengarry, who died when his ship, the Stirling Castle, was wrecked in January 1828. So this tune was actually played at his funeral. So it is, as lamenty as you can get. It's a lament played at the funeral. So I think it's a very pretty tune. What makes it great for learners is it's actually got a very simple structure. So you can see here the ground. We've got two phrases. We'll call it phrase A. It's just here. For line 1, we're just going to play phrase A twice. So repeat that into phrase B. Line 2, we're just going to go phrase A. Then we've got, this is basically phrase B again, but we've got a slight variation, a little change here. And then we've got phrase 2 again. And then in line 3, we're just going to go phrase A and then phrase B. Just bear with me 1 second. I just got to. Okay, so the ground follows what we call, now there's a term here you may or may not be familiar with, a scansion. So scansion's a term used in poetry, and it really is, in pibroch, we're talking about the general pulsing of the tune. So if you look at this first bar, we've got 3 major theme notes. You've got an A here, a C here, and an A here. In the second bar, you've got an E, another C here, and an A. reason why I haven't talked about the E and the F, which are short notes, is these are the main pulses that we're talking about. So the scansion follows what we call them, what we refer to as medium, medium, strong. That's the weighting that we actually apply to these notes. So you'd have a medium weighting on here, a medium weighting on this note here, and then a strong weighting on the A there. And we follow that pattern all the way through. Sorry, I've got people. So that scansion follows. We follow that scansion all the way through the first bar, through the second bar, right through to here. So in phrase B, we're going to have a medium here, and a strong here. So what I'm going to do, I'm actually just going to play for you first of all. I'll play you line 1, and then I'm going to talk you through it and show you what I did. So this will just give you a little idea of how it sounds first of all, and then we'll get into the nitty-gritty of it. Okay, so what I did through there is, I'll sing through it a little bit. So if you wanted to spell out the medium, medium, strong stuff, I went through and went, and medium, strong, and medium, strong, and medium, strong, and medium, strong, medium, strong, and medium, strong. Hopefully that makes sense to everyone. And then the beauty of this tune is, with all of the repetition, is we just follow that pattern all the way through. So line 2 is simply going to be and medium, strong, and medium, strong. Now we get into this phrase B here with a slight variation here. So instead of playing this B cadence, if you're unfamiliar with cadence, I'll talk about it a little bit, but like I said, you might have to talk to your tutors about that. But just a slight variation here, and then we go into this phrase here. Medium, strong, and medium, strong, medium, strong, and medium, strong. And line 3, we're just going to go the first phrase straight into the second phrase to finish off. Hi an obrawan hare hawan roi hey an hai I think I have time to play through. I'll play through the whole ground for you so that you've got it on this recording. That's pretty much that for the ground. Easy, eh? So, like I said, it's a relatively straightforward ground. The pulsing is pretty straightforward. The phrasing is nice and repetitive, which really helps us to memorize tunes. Now, as we get into the variation one, so VAR one here. Now, the phrasing pattern that I talked about before, where we had line one being phrase one repeated, then phrase two, line two is phrase one, phrase two with a slight variation, then phrase two again, and line three is phrase one followed by phrase two. That phrasing pattern goes all the way through the tune, okay? So it actually makes the tune very easy to memorize with a bit of practice. That's how, you know, you would have heard pipers play some big tunes maybe. That's how we consume the big tunes. We look for the patterns, and then you'll find that usually variation one is the one that sets the tone for the rest of the tune. Once you get that pattern in your head, you'll actually see that all the way through. There might be the odd tune that goes against this, but in general, that's how we consume these big tunes. So variation one, you can see here, so this is what's called a G-ish variation. So G-ish is spelled D-I-T-H-I-S. That's how I've heard it pronounced. You may have heard it pronounced some other ways. So same phrasing pattern. This time, instead of following a medium, medium, strong with three major theme notes, we're actually looking at four across the phrase. You've got a long A here, a C, an E, and another C. So here we want to have in the back of our mind, strong, medium, medium, strong. Now this is a pattern that you will find repeat, you know, it pops up in a lot of P-brooks. Okay, strong, medium, medium, strong is really the yardstick that most P-brooks are played. Few comments on this one. So you'll see we've got a long note here and then a nice little short note that then takes you up to the next theme note and so on. I'll just play you the first line, okay? And so on. So the bit that I find tricky in variations like this, and many G-ish variations, is how aggressively do we cut these short notes? And then how do we bounce up to the next one? So I use a little bit of imagery here. I like to picture a rubber band stretching. So the long note is where we're going to have the stretch of the rubber band. The short note is the release through. Now, if you imagine that, if you don't extend a rubber band very far, when it springs back, it's going to be very soft, quite, you know, limp kind of spring back. You go too far, it's going to really want to snap back in. So if I sing through it, I'm looking for a hun, hun, ha, hun, he, hun, ha, hun, hun, and so on. If I don't pull back and pull out that long note, I end up with a hun, hun, ha, hun, he, hun, ha. And you hear that short note becomes very, you know, kind of fat and doesn't have much impact to it. If I go too far, hun, hun, ha, hun, he, hun, ha, I really feel compelled to snap through it. So we want to try and find that balance. Now, this is where your practice comes in, a bit of singing through it. I find a lot of them imagining the tune and actually humming it, even in just your daily life, you know, singing through the variations. Hun, hun, ha, hun, he, hun, ha, hun, 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 ha, hun, he, hun, ha, hun, ho, hun, he, hun, ho, hun, hun, and so on. I'll just play through line 1 again. Probably play through the whole thing of this thing. It is quite short. So see if you can follow along. Line 1 is going to be that first phrase twice, and then the second phrase. Line 2 is going to be 1, 2, 3 straight across, and line 3 is going to be phrase 1 and phrase 2. And so on. So on the surface, I find G-ish variations appear quite simple. It's always surprising how hard it is to actually maintain that phrasing, maintain your tempos. That's where your practice comes in. And then the next tricky bit is getting into the doubling. So the doubling, you can see here, they've just written out the first phrase and then said etc. So it is exactly the same notes. You can see here we've got A, C, E, and C. And then what's line 1? Phrase A repeated into phrase B. Line 2 is phrase A, phrase B with a slight variation, and phrase B again. Line 3 is phrase A into phrase B. You can see the difference here in the doubling is that instead of jumping down to low A each time after the theme note, we're staying on the same note. Now, and then you maintain that all the way through. There's a bit of tricky grace noting in here, and the grace noting is exactly the same. You will come across little instances like, say, F, F, E, right? So in the doubling, we're going to have an F here, followed by another F, and then down to this E with 3 G grace notes in a row. That doesn't pop up very often, so it's going to feel a little bit weird the first time you try it. Now, with a doubling, you may have heard a rule of thumb that we're always going to, speed up the doubling a little bit compared to the singling. I don't like to say speed it up. I do find that, when we go down that route, a lot of people tend to play too fast. I find when you are staying on the same note, that's already going to create a bit of an illusion that you're playing a little bit faster. Yes, you're probably going to just push a little bit and just shave a little bit off the theme note, but really it's quite similar to variation 1. Staying on the same note makes it feel a little bit faster. Maybe just don't linger quite so long on the theme note, and you'll give that sensation that it's actually a fair bit faster. I'll play through this variation. It's over and done with very quickly, so you'd be surprised how quick it moves along. And then you're into the next variation there. So the danger in tunes like this, when you've got G-ish doublings, they're over and done with very quickly. Your concentration levels have to be right up there, really thinking about your phrasing, making sure that you're not, stumbling over any of the grace noting. So this is where things start to test you a little bit. Okay, aside from that, variation 1 and its doubling, basically the same, just a few little things to be thinking about. Right, now let's get into the business end of things. So the torluas and crunluas. This is where a lot of your technical work comes in. So the challenge with the torlua and crunlua variations is obviously your consistency of execution, how clear your execution is, maintaining your phrasing. So if you're only just new to Piobaireachd, so in C grade, for example, in novice and D grade in the VPA, the Vic Pipers Association, novice and D grade only have to play the ground, and D grade plays the ground and first variation. So really you're talking about someone playing at a C grade level here locally. So C grade, we require players to play a full tune. Okay, so by that stage, hopefully you've had a few years of experience playing the competition on the competition boards, and you're ready to play your first full tune. So tall lures and crun lures, this is where a lot of practice comes in. I spent a lot of time sitting on the couch, just ripping through tall lures and crun lures, but not really ripping through them. It's a really easy exercise. This is just a little tip for everyone. I just play a tall lure scale. So in Piobaireachd, our tall lures are going to jump down to low A every time. Remember, the D tall lure has a B grace note, not a D grace note. Okay, that's a very important one. I do catch out when I'm judging or teaching anyone, I do catch out the odd person who keeps playing the D grace note. And remember your Piobaireachd high G. So simple tall lure scale. Okay, times that by a couple of hundred. And I like to mix around the speeds. Sometimes I'll play through it very open, you know, exaggerated. Other times I'll play through it a bit faster. But I'm looking for consistency. Every time I do a scale like that, every tall lure and crun lure has to be the same. Okay, so that's just a good little practice routine to get into, and do them regularly every day. So tall lure singling. So here we're just going to play, it's exactly the same notes again. So one little rule of thumb about these sort of variations. The last theme note, which has a tall lure on it, before this cadence group. So I call it a cadence group because it involves a cadence and it's sort of an extended kind of pause that separates out the phrases. Always play the last one before a cadence, just a little bit longer. Okay, but you can see here that the notes are basically the same as variation 1. A, C, and E, and then you've got a cadence on C, which really correlates with this C up here. Okay, when we get over to phrase 2, B, F, E, hold that one out before your cadence on B, which correlates with this B up here. Okay, so you can see that these patterns are all starting to emerge. Okay, and that's how we make it easier to memorize. So I'll just play through line 1. So tall lure singling. Okay, so a few comments. You can see here I just held each theme note out, grace note to the next one, and with your tall lure in between. Okay, and I tried to make my tall lures as consistent as possible. The cadence group here can be played a few different ways. So that's the way that I've learned it and the way that I play it. I've also heard it played where this low A here is actually played as a short note, almost an and into the next one. So it'd go hun shabada ha shabada he shabada he lia one hun shabada ha. So that just jumps into the next one. Really pretty as well. I don't see any problem with it. It's really just what you prefer. Yeah, absolutely fine. I haven't met a judge yet, but sort of will mark you down for either way. But that depends on the judge of the day. So line 1 again, same pattern as before. Phrase A repeated into phrase B. Line 2, phrase A into this variation of phrase B. Okay, you can see this one doesn't have the cadence. And then phrase B again, and line 3 is just phrase 1 and phrase 2, phrase A and phrase B. I'll just play you the line 2, just worried about just keeping an eye on the time. I'll just play you line 2 just to give you a sensation of that middle phrase there. And so forth. Taller doubling. So all we're going to do, we're going to get rid of the cadence. We're just running through all of these theme notes. We're keeping our strong, medium, medium, strong, just like we did up here in variation 1. You'll notice the notes are exactly the same. So we're really trying to replicate variation 1. We're just substituting a taller in to these little bits here. I'll just go through line 1. And so on. Just a little tip here for practicing the taller doubling. And this works with a lot of tunes. A good way to do it is to actually play variation 1 or play a bar of it even, or a phrase, and then play the taller doubling. You're actually looking for the theme notes to sound basically exactly the same. You're just putting in the doubling. So if I did this, can you hear that? You can hear that reflection there, that the two are basically the same. This is a really good way of actually, you know, I hear players sometimes plow through these doubling variations, or they forget their phrasing or something like that. So remember, in the back of your mind, we're trying to keep the music, the same all the way through. We're building a tune here. You know, we've gone from a ground, we've set the theme there. Variation 1, we've sort of set up what's going to happen in the rest of the tune. And as we keep going through, as we go through, we want to be adding to that, you know, with just the embellishment. So I'm just a bit worried about the time. So I'm just going to go into the Crunlua. So Crunlua is exactly the same as Torlua. We're just replacing Torluas with Crunluas. Another same exercises as before. I do my scale with Crunluas. I do them fast, I do them slow. I'm looking for consistency. And it's exactly the same pattern here. See how easy it is to memorize now? That was just line 1. Line 2 is exactly the same as before. So we have phrase A into phrase B with the variation, and then into phrase B again. I'll just play you line 2 because that always feels a little bit different with that bit there. Bear with me. See how quickly it moves through that second phrase. So you've got to be really on your toes there. And then line 3 is simply phrase A and then phrase B. Crunlua doubling. So this is the real business end. By this stage, you've been playing for 7.5 minutes. Yeah, there's pressure of the competition building up on you. You know, you're a bit tired. Your instrument may or may not be holding its tuning. So depending on the room, whatever. So lots going on here, but this is the time to really shine. You know, all your practice has to come out. Concentration levels get tested, and then we've got to execute the biggest embellishment that we've got. All right, at least in this tune. I'll go through line one, and then we'll see how we go from there. And so on. So that pretty much sums it up. Okay, so this is, like I said, this is really a bit of a walk through the tune. I don't think we've got time to go through the whole thing sort of in one go, because unfortunately just on this licensing of Zoom, it only allows us a 40-minute window. So you just bear with me one second. So hopefully that's helped you out a little bit. We will be holding other, hopefully be holding other ones of these sessions. If you do want to get in contact with the VPA, visit us through the website where you logged in here. So that's pipingvictoria.com. If you'd like to get any tuition or hook up with a tutor, whether it be here in Melbourne, we've got contacts in other places as well, but you can contact us and we'll be happy to help out anyone. Our email is victorianpipers@gmail.com. So yeah, if you want to have lessons from me, if you want to have lessons from any of our other VPA tutors, we've got a whole bunch of them who are all really good. Feel free to give us a call. So hopefully that's been helpful for you. If you do want to give any feedback, feel free to jump onto our Facebook page and put a comment in, or you can email us. I'll just take this off and then we can see if anyone's talking in the chat. So I'll just stop the share of this. Cool. Alrighty, so if you've got any questions, what I'm actually going to do, I'm going to stop the recording so that we can actually have a little chat. I don't know how much time we've got left. One thing that is missing from Zoom is a clock. So I'll stop the recording now. So hooroo to everyone who's on the recording, and we'll have some question time.